All right, example 4. Solve arc sine x minus arc cosine of x equals pi over 6. This is definitely going to be one of the more difficult problems that we come across, in that we have an x and an x, but the x is being dealt with by different inverse trig functions. We've got an arc sine and an arc cosine equals pi over 6. All right, so the way that we deal with this problem is we get one of the trig functions by itself. We're going to get arc sine x as the only thing on the left side of the equation. To do that, we're going to add arc cosine, inverse cosine x to both sides of the equation. We're going to move it over here to the right side of the equation. So if we rewrite this, we're going to have arc sine of x is equal to the arc cosine of x plus pi over 6. All right. Now we want to get x by itself. How do we get rid of this inverse sign? We're going to do sine to both sides of the equation. The left hand side works out nicely in that it just cancels. We're going to get x equals, but on the right side we've got sine of the entire right side, sine of the inverse cosine of x plus pi over 6. All right. Now, so to solve this from here, we need to go back into our formulas and realize that we have a formula for sine of A plus B. The formula for sine of A plus B, and remember this is all going to be x equals, we'll put the x equals on there at the end, but the formula for sine A plus B is the sine A cosine B plus cosine A sine B. Now, you'll notice if we take a look at what I've written out here, sine A, I don't really know yet what's going on for the first part here, so I've left it as the variable A, but I do know the second thing here. Pi over 6 is the B. All right, the B in our formula is the second thing in your equation, in your right side of your equation in any case. The pi over 6 goes in here where the B would go in our formula. All right, so now our job is to figure out what is this A. And just like in the previous problems, we've got cosine -1 of x. We can draw ourselves a triangle. Inverse cosine tells us, remember, it's x divided by r. We don't know what r is here, but what could we put underneath the x here? We could put a 1. So we know that the r is 1 right here. Pythagorean theorem, we're going to have 1 squared minus x squared. If we do the square root of that, we're going to get the y value, 1 minus x squared all underneath the square root. All right, so it's not necessarily pretty, but this is what we've got so far. If we take a look and go step by step through this, we can figure this out. Sine of A, again, we can make this triangle A. We're going to look at triangle A and say, what is the sine? Well, we figured it out using the Pythagorean theorem. So for the sine A, we can replace that with, in parentheses, square root of 1 minus x squared. Cosine of pi over 6. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. The cosine at 30 degrees, if we remember our unit circle, is root 3 over 2. Plus the cosine of a. Cosine of a actually works out quite nicely. It's just x over 1, so just x. And the sine of pi over 6, the sine of 30 degrees, is 1/2. So at this point, we are going to solve for x. We're going to do some algebra here. Let's simplify. X is equal to, if we distribute here, we're going to have root 3 times the square root of 1 minus x squared plus x all over 2. Notice that both terms here have 2 as a common denominator, so we can put 2 underneath as our denominator here. To get rid of the 2, we're going to multiply both sides, so we will have 2x is equal to the square root of 3 times the square root of 1 minus x squared plus x. We can move the x over to the other side by subtracting, so 2x minus x. If we minus x on both sides, we're going to get x is equal to the square root of 3 minus 3x squared. If we distribute the 3 in there. And so we can cancel the square root by squaring. We're going to end up with x squared equals 3 minus 3x squared. Add that to the other side. See if we can squeeze it here. Squeeze it in here. 4x squared is equal to 3x squared. I'm going to write it up here. X squared is equal to 3/4. Divide both sides by 4. Square root both sides. Final answer. X is equal to the square root of 3 divided by 2. All right. Now, one final thing on this problem. We've gotten to the very end. X is equal to square root of 3 divided by 2. We do need to check to make sure that this answer works for our equation. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Arc sine, instead of x, I'm going to put in root 3 over 2. Minus the inverse sine of root 3 over 2. Remember, that's the answer we got for x. See what happens here. The inverse sine of root 3 over 2, you get a y value of root 3 over 2 on the unit circle at a value of 60 degrees, which is also known as pi over 3. You get a cosine value, an x value of root 3 over 2 at 30 degrees, otherwise known as pi over 6, is pi over 3 minus pi over 6 equal to, look back in the original equation, equal to pi over 6. It absolutely is. Remember, pi over 3 is the same thing as saying 2 pi over 6. What's 2 minus 1? Pi over 6. So our answer does check out. Sometimes it won't. X equals the square root of 3 over 2. So we do need to check our answers on these to make sure that they work.